Hi, I'm Sean Sposito. I'm the Assistant Director for Content Strategy at the Christian Science Monitor. And welcome back to Highwire PR's third annual happy hour. With me, I have Jesse McKenna. You're the Director of Product Management, right? I got that right?
You got that right.
At vArmour. Bil Harmer, you are a strategist at Zscaler. And Justin Fier.
Yes.
Did I say that right?
Yeah, you got it.
I didn't call you Fier.
No,
Fier.
you're good. Feel
Yes,
good.
yes, I love that. I love that so much. you are the Director of Threat Intelligence at Darktrace.
Yep.
You know, gentlemen, we were talking a little bit before about how the world gives the cybersecurity industry $75 billion a year, and every year there's still these large-scale cybersecurity attacks, right? There are these large-scale intrusions. I mean, what's the environment, like the commercial environment, the governmental, the regulatory environment that sort of allows that to exist? I mean, Bill, because you're a strategist, I hope you'll go first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the reason that we're seeing it is we're giving $75 billion and we're approaching new problems with the same old solution, right? We're coming at it from the perimeter, the corporate stack, building what we built really well and did really well for a bunch of years in a world that's become mobile where the network's irrelevant.
And the perimeter is porous.
No,
exactly.
Absolutely gone.
Yeah. Jesse, you look like you want to say something?
No, I absolutely, I completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, BYOD has become like this large issue, and in a world where everyone's laps are ubiquitous, like my network is ubiquitous.
Yep. We
right?
call them bring your own disasters in our office. So.
At Darktrace.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, you know, Justin, I sort of wonder like how attackers are sort of capitalizing on like that whole porous perimeter, right? This whole idea of IoT and the whole idea of BYOD.
Sure. Well, I think I don't think we got caught off guard. You know, I think we got caught off guard because we've grown so accustomed to using these devices and making them a part of our life. And the attackers are very smart people. They adapt to everything, and they learned that we have so many of these throughout our houses and the residents.
Yeah.
Let's exploit it. I always kind of ask, you know, how many connected devices do you have in your house? I counted recently, we've got over 30.
Really?
So if you look at that, you could think your houses as small to medium businesses now.
Darktrace must be paying really well that you have 30 IoT devices.
Yeah.
The house is big enough to have 30
My
IoT
chicken
devices.
coop's getting ready to go online like next week. So
Get out of here.
I'm
That
being
nest
dead
in your
serious.
chicken hoop.
Yep.
You must have a good firewall on your router.
I hope so. Or this is going to bring a whole lot of attention to my networks.
Of course. I mean,
Forget everything I just said.
Jesse, I often wonder, like, are things quantitatively worse, right? I mean, or are just breach disclosure laws just that much better, right? I mean, that's always something that's sort of in the back of my mind. I don't know if there's a way to actually know that, but I mean, for someone who's been in the industry as long as you, I think you'd have a sense.
Yeah, I think it's actually a combination of things, right? The number of breaches that are happening is largely because more of them are being discovered.
Yeah.
And there definitely is an aspect to more regulation, more requirements to disclose breaches. So things that would previously be swept under the rug and no one would know about, now they actually have to disclose publicly.
For regulatory reasons, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And you see things, with all of the new regulations going out, whether it's improvements in for PCI, whether it's HIPAA, whether it's SOX, any of those requirements have implications throughout the data center.
Yeah.
Right. And so the regulation is really just trying to catch up to the situation that exists with all these breaches happening, to try to bring everyone along for the ride instead of just the ones who are on the front lines fighting.
Yeah, I mean, Bill, but there are a lot of competing forces, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the other part of it, I think, absolutely, regulations are pushing us to disclose. But what we have is an actual, an easier access into the darknet where an average person, I shouldn't say average, but an investigator, a news reporter, whatever,
Exactly.
can get access and start negotiating and finding and attempting to buy data. So in the old days, if you were going to buy data, you weren't going to end up in an alley trying to talk to somebody, risking yourself.
Yeah.
But it's easy to grab a Tor browser, end up on a darknet, and buy some data, and then expose it, and Krebs calls you.
I would also add that I don't think we're necessarily seeing more breaches now. We're just hearing about them more.
Of course, yeah.
I'm not blaming
Easier
the
to find.
media, but...
No, you
but
can
you
just
hear-
say,
you-
yell at me.
You hear about them so much more. And I always say also, if you look at the level of effect of an attack, that will foreshadow and kind of let you know where it's going to go in the future, and you can almost predict how it might morph and adapt. And I think that's the other thing. Attackers see the level of effectiveness based on the media coverage, and decide if it makes sense to continue on with development.
Yeah, it's an absolute business. Like this is big business. So ransomware is big business because it is very effective and very profitable, right?
Of course.
And the more it ends up in the news, the more people hear, hey, people are paying. If nobody admitted to paying, how effective would it be? It'd probably not be as effective. If everybody stopped paying, ransomware goes away.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a higher cultural attention to these sorts of issues,
Absolutely.
right? Because as technology begins to underlie everything that we do, the security of that technology becomes tantamount to kind of the brick and mortar bedrock of our society.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. I mean, so I think there are a lot of interesting externalities that come with like a regular person without a lot of technical expertise, being able to kind of surf the dark net, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, does that sort of play in? I mean, like you said before, it sort of plays into this perception, right? I mean, are there other externalities that come along with that sort of purview into sort of like the unindexed things behind the clear net, right?
Yeah, I don't know that it's so much just the clear net. I go back to my original statement that I think it's just the coverage of it.
Okay.
It's bringing more to the market space of the dark net that might have never known anything about it, and those external activities that might not have even wanted to enter it. And as my colleague here said, as a service, it's just so easy. You don't even have to be technical anymore.
Yeah.
Ransomware is a service.
Well, yeah, you'd be like
bar
a
is
script kiddie.
so low.
One-click UI. You don't even need to be a script kiddie. You can just paste someone and get a
the
it's a
professionalization.
SaaS model now. It's
Of
ridiculous.
course.
It's out of this world. So I think that's a large contributor as well.
So Jesse, I'm always really interested, like given like all the things that we're talking about, like how does an individual company come and do risk analysis, right? Like how do they approach risk now? Now in a way that they might not have 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'd say 10 years ago, there were best practices for how you would secure your network, how you secure your data center.
Defense in depth, checking the box.
Exactly. And check the box, go through and buy the products, deploy them, and think that you're safe. And and then obviously with all the breaches that continue to go on, and with ransomware coming up, you realize that there's still vulnerabilities. There's that defense in depth strategy is not enough.
Sure.
And so you have to gain full visibility into your environment, and then you have to be able to actually have a risk-based approach to the things that are most important, put the most controls around that. The things that are less important, you need to appropriately secure, but you can probably get by with a little bit less. It's really focusing your efforts on the most critical assets, the most critical applications, and making sure that the crown jewels are locked down.
And it's like the whole concept of defense in depth, and you said it when you said checkbox.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we turned it into. We turned it into go buy one of everything, and now you have security, and you
sit on
don't.
the shelf, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because defense in depth absolutely is underpinned by the fact that it will fail.
Yes.
Defense in depth expects failure
Yes.
Or a vulnerability to be found, and you have to offset the gates in there, right? So you have to do a risk-based approach. You have to find what's important, because something will get through, and when it gets through, what either stops it at another layer or reduces your exposure when it happens. So that's what defense in depth is. We got to go away from this. I'm going to go buy one of everything and throw them out there, and now I've got it. Checkbox security is an absolute disaster.
Yeah, well,
And that's where your $75 billion is going.
exactly. So it's almost like it's the vendor's fault, right? I mean, but like, what led us? Like, what was the catalyst that took us from 35 security companies, like security vendors, to over 500, right? I mean, I think that's a really important piece here.
Big breaches screamed, and when we saw board of directors, we saw executives, CIOs, CSOs, CISOs being fired. When it started to become a reality to them that a security breach is going to impact them, people started cutting checks and started saying, blank check, go get what you need.
I remember Bank of America, right? They came out and they said, we have a blank check for security. Or it was one of the big banks. Might not have been Bank of America. I forget who did it first.
Yeah.
Might have been Capital One or Wells Fargo or Chase. And he said, we have a blank check. Like somebody said, I have a $500,000 budget. Like, no, I have no budget. No. And I mean, like, what does that say about the industry? Like, we're just throwing things against the wall. Jesse?
It's really, when we're talking about the amount of money that's spent on security, the number of vendors that are out there, the fact that breaches are still happening, really the underlying dynamic is that this is hard. Security is really hard. And it's not something that's easily solved, and not something you can just go buy the product, plug it in, done. So that really gets to why you need an effective, engaged defense in-depth strategy, and why you need to to look and try to add structures into your environment to reduce your attack surface.
Of course.
So just try and control what might happen and have processes in place to respond to it.
Yeah.
But it's just tough. It's a hard problem. Which is
Yeah,
why there's so
as
many
folks that sell technology, right, I'm always really interested to hear, how you measure the effectiveness of your tools. That is very, very hard. We all know about NSS Labs and the tests that they do, but like, how can an individual security executive say to their boss, like, hey, this really worked? Because at some point, like, somebody's going to come back and said, how do we know it worked, right? Like, how do we know that, like, we just wrote $30,000 a month for this thing. We budgeted it. Right. Like, someone has to be accountable. I mean, Bill, how do executives measure that?
I think at least in our world, because we're security as a service, we're measured on our customers and what happens with our customers directly, right? We're not measured on buy a product, sell it, and then come back 6 months later, a year later, and look for a renewal.
conciliatory.
Right. We have to be successful in defending them. We have to be able to internally measure, give them the metrics back to show where the attacks are happening, how many are getting through. It has to be full transparency in there. We cannot go into a customer and say nothing's going to get through or hide it from them. It has to show them. I have to go into a customer and say, look, here's what got through all of our defenses, right? And have that conversation with them and say, now, what happened at that point? Were you ready? Are you prepared? Have you done those types of things that you need to do a full defense in depth that includes incident response, attribution, root cause analysis, and then remediation afterwards?
Yeah. Justin, you're shaking your head.
Yeah. Well, as far as holding anybody accountable, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I think the company is held accountable. I think you can't really hold the security vendors accountable because they're doing the best job they can, but as anybody will know, the attack surface is constantly changing on a daily basis.
Sure.
The attackers are getting better. They're learning how our products work and developing their tools around that. So it's really hard to hold us accountable, and I really put it more on the companies. And that's why I try to make my clients just think a little bit differently about security. Look at security from a different standpoint. Look at it from the inside out. Mm-hmm. Yes, be preventative, but also be reactionary and detect as soon as possible. Not 200 days from now, but hours from now. And I hold more of the accountability on the teams, training them up, knowing their networks. I'm always shocked in these big, heavy media breaches, but the amount of data that left their networks.
Sure.
How does a network team not realize terabytes of data has been leaving their network over the course of a couple days? And that shocks me that they.
But it's probably a reliance on shared services, right? Like it's probably a reliance on shared services. It's a talent gap, right?
It's definitely a talent gap. So like when you buy a good product, and you can buy a really good product and put it in the hands of somebody that doesn't
know how to use
necessarily know.
It's not going to do any good.
Exactly. And I think that is where we struggle, because you take a company, Target, that's a retailer. Take Exxon, that's a gas company.
Yeah.
They're not security companies, right? That's.
But now every company has to be a security company because every company is a software company.
Exactly.
Everyone is selling software.
It took a long time for every company to realize that they're in the data management and data protection business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? A long time. They weren't thinking of it in that respect. IT's always been a black hole. Just been a place where you put some money, give them some equipment, and hope everybody continues to move along. Right?
Exactly.
Doesn't make money for them. And they struggle with that because when you look at the bottom line in a business case, you're saying what makes money? Pump the oil or put money in security? Just pump the oil. That's the way you do it, right? With a security company. So a guy that's building a product, their money is in building the product and selling it and making it the best they can.
Yeah.
But they can't, you have to hold the people that buy it and say, oh, I'm going to take this Ferrari and, not know how to use a clutch. You can't turn to the vendor and say, well, you sold me a bad car.
Yeah.
No, you sold him a great car if you knew what you were doing with it.
Exactly.
That's why I think this is going to become more services based. Even the hardware vendors are going to start delivering more services with their products to make sure that the customers are successful.
It's inevitable. You can't avoid it.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about different industry segments, like, are there very specific industry segments that have sort of woken up more than others when it comes to security? Like maybe retailers. There are a lot of lessons learned for how retailers are treating security now, or how gas companies are treating security now, or healthcare companies.
I think they're all woken up. I'm sure, obviously, when major breaches happen, that industry that's affected most just wakes up the most. But I think just in light of the last 2 years with Sony, Panama Papers, DNC,
Sure.
Yahoo, it covered almost every industry possible. So
Ashley Madison, throw that one in
right,
just
it's
for fun.
impossible to avoid it. So I don't know that it's just one specific industry. And I would say you're being foolish if you think your industry is not a target. So
Of course.
I wouldn't say
Jesse?
so.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think different industries are. I think that everyone's waking up to the fact that they need to have this improved security, and some industries are able to adapt faster than others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ones that are really hardware bound, like SCADA systems, things like that. Those are difficult to deploy.
Exactly.
And bugs that are, if you're in healthcare,
Yes.
and you have a device that's running Windows XP, and the FDA says you're not allowed to patch it.
Yeah, validated systems.
Yeah, it's like it's really challenging. So those who have made more the leap to newer technologies, to virtualization, things like that, it's much easier for them to adapt. And I think that's kind of how I like to look at security. It's not about where are we at right now and how do we secure it.
Yeah.
It's more about what security strategy can I implement that will guide me through and take me through from physical to virtual to cloud.
But this is all a
containers,
decision
and-
about risk,
Absolutely.
right? Like, there's a reason why a hospital won't patch a certain tool, right? A certain like an X-ray machine, because it might crash or it might have an unknown behavior when a Sean Sposito is like lying underneath it,
Or
right?
it's very expensive to revalidate it. And that's with
Yes.
validated systems, that's the real problem. They want to make sure that what goes in is a known quantity coming out. So you validate the system, and then you cannot change a thing because it could change that equation of I put in these chemicals, I get out that pill, right? So
Yeah.
to revalidate for every patch, and when you have Patch Tuesday, you're going
Which
out of business.
Microsoft missed today,
They
apparently.
did. First time in when? How
I don't
long?
know. Apparently, there's some real issue.
Yeah, that's everybody was wondering where it went.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about the media, I don't think we covered it. So gentlemen, just sort of as a last question, I'm always really interested in asking, like, conceptually, like, is there a way of defending networks today, right? Given the threat landscape, that should change, right? Or like, do you have any advice about how to defend networks? I mean, after the OPM breach, it was zero trust networks. Before that, it was sort of this concentric circle model.
The two things that come to mind is just thinking a little bit outside the box, which I already mentioned before. Handling security different than we've grown accustomed to, not so hyper-focused on the desktop server model, obviously.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
going
yeah.
to get into IoT, but we all know the chaos that can bring. But if you just look at the history of the last couple of years, your email is probably your most sensitive asset. 'Cause
Yeah.
we talk so candidly in there. And so within our company internally, we call these trust or influence attacks.
Yeah.
And there's these new type of attacks that are really just meant to sway public opinion. And I think watching your data and protecting it a little bit closer is really what companies need to focus on more.
Yeah.
Less about the perimeter, just more about that most critical asset, which is what we talk so candidly about.
Yeah.
Which is our email system.
Yeah. So Bill, sort of consider the perimeter irrelevant.
Yeah, I say, the network is irrelevant now. I go back to Strange Days, the movie, and paranoia being reality on a finer scale. Trust nothing and inspect everything. That's I think that's really all you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. You have to be able to know exactly what's going on across your network and your data center. You have to be able to control it. You have to be able to implement the policies that are required for those critical applications and for a risk-based approach for securing the things that are important, and then putting the appropriate level of security around the things that are less important but are still valuable.
So for our most sacred assets, right? I mean, are you a believer in the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I'm not.
Okay.
I wear a tinfoil hat and I'm a bit paranoid and I like to own
Everything's
all
on-prem?
my hardware
What-
and data.
Yeah, but you worked inside the intelligence community.
I will not confirm nor deny that.
Respect.
But maybe, yes.
Well, then that is all the confirmation that I need. Gentlemen, this has been so much fun.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
Thank you.
guys.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.